This is your friendly neighborhood author, Jonathan, and you are listening to Season 4 of the Floor Rejects podcast, The Wells House Phenomenon. Okay, welcome back to the Floor Rejects podcast. Let's do a quick rundown of what we missed last week on Glee. Last week was largely just Warren and Edward together. This kind of daytime romance that they're having develops. We had some more sexy stuff. We had some intimate moments, but we also had some times where Warren kind of pushed Edward off, not in a mean way, really. He was really kind to someone who, during the night, is actively trying to, murder him. Not murder him, but consume him, basically. So that's kind of what we got last week. This week, we're going to catch up with them again, and it's going to be a much more even-keeled chapter. We're not going to have so much one-sidedness. So without further ado, let's get into chapter 19. Let me click this button. Chapter 19, Stranger to Stranger. When Warren wakes, Edward is lying next to him, his large, bare chest rising and falling slowly in the dim light from the single lamp he left on at all times. Warren stretches, groaning as his skin on his arms begins to burn and all of his vertebrae seem to crack at once. Edward stirs, peeking over at his bedfellow.
"Good morning, War,"
Edward grumbles, leaning over to throw an arm at Warren's outstretched frame. "Morning, Eddie," Warren hums, ignoring his arms to enjoy the intimateness of this peaceful moment. He was aware he didn't get that many calm times with Edward alone. Now, when the bedroom door shut, Edward was behind it with him, and there was a constant sexual tension that they toyed with. This was less sexual and more a moment of comfortable silence. Warren nuzzles into Edward's arm, his scent intoxicating, musky, as if he had been sweating in the cold room. After a few minutes of low breathing and light touches, Edward climbs from the bed, redressing sloppily.
"Better go shower before I get caught sneaking out,"
Edward says with a grin. Warren smiles back, readying himself for the day as Edward quietly leaves, the sound of his footsteps on the stairs above Warren a pleasant sound. Warren pulls a lazy, springtime outfit on, careful of his arms, which are still in a fiery state. He heads to the kitchen, where he finds his coffee already at his spot, along with some damp cloth and salve in a bowl. Lila is nowhere to be found, and so he goes about smearing the paste on his arms, hissing at the burn. He wraps himself up, and as he finishes his first cup of coffee in the silent, stuffy room, Lila rushes in, her gray hair flying around her head in an iridescent halo. Warren smiles up at her. "I'm so sorry, Warren. I was busy upstairs and I let the time get away from me. Let me get breakfast started," she says, and Warren tries to calm her, assuring her that there was no rush. She clatters about the kitchen anyway, rushing to get eggs and potatoes cooked as Warren pours himself a second cup of coffee. While he sips and gazes out the window, he can hear Edward coming down the hall, his footsteps lighter than normal. Warren smiles as he turns towards the door, but as Edward shuffles in, Warren leaps to his feet. "Thomas!" Warren yelps, jumping up to pull a chair out for the man who was half draped across his brother. His leg was in a cast, his right arm in a crude cloth sling. Edward sets him down roughly in the chair, and Warren rushes to pour a cup of coffee for the injured man as well, but pauses as he finds his hand shaking uncontrollably for no reason. His head suddenly begins to tighten, and he drops the cup he was holding, letting it titter noisily on the counter. He feels pressure on his skull, like his brain was going to explode, and as it passes, he looks up to find the three other people in the kitchen staring at him. Lila looks concerned, Edward confused, and Thomas is smiling. Warren waves them off, steadying himself and pouring the hot black liquid for Thomas, who sips greedily as Edward goes to his mother, helping her with breakfast and talking to her quietly. "So, how was the hospital? I wanted to visit, but Edward, I just knew that's not what you would have wanted," Warren asks, settling in across from the man in question as the kitchen fills with the smell and sizzle of bacon.
It was fine," I just had to count the days till I could come back, I guess. Pretty boring just staring at the wall.
Thomas says, looking quickly over his shoulder in time to catch his brother staring at him. You didn't watch TV or have them bring you a tablet or something? Warren asks, shocked. Thomas does a strange double take, like he hadn't thought that the hospital would even have TVs, let alone a tablet.
Oh, yeah, I just, there wasn't anything I was interested in seeing,
Thomas says, and Edward comes over and claps his brother hard on the shoulders. Thomas and Warren both wince. Edward grins, plopping down at his usual spot next to Warren, who's off-put by Edward's blindness to his brother's discomfort. So, how long till you're up and about? Warren asks, and Thomas laughs.
Not long. We aren't sure yet, but the leg isn't really that bad,
he says.
Yes, my brother will be back to normal before we know it.
Edward talks over his brother, and Warren slides a hand under the table and strokes Edward's thigh, hoping to calm his lover down. The man was obviously not used to not being the center of attention. Breakfast! Lila calls out, bringing over a massive skillet filled with eggs, hash browns, and bacon. She scoops food onto her eldest son's plate and Warren's carefully before slopping the remnants on her youngest child's plate. Oil splatters on Thomas's arms, and he hisses, recoiling silently as Lila seems to scowl down at him. Maybe we can get you propped up in the sitting room, find you something to watch there while you rest, Warren suggests, watching as Thomas picks at his food, his demeanor shifting quietly into the meek, sullen person he was when Warren had first arrived.
Maybe so,
Thomas mutters. Edward abruptly shoves his chair back as Warren leans towards Thomas in concern.
Family, I have something to tell you,
Edward says, looking down to Warren, who looks on in shock as Edward slowly slides a hand up Warren's back to rest on his shoulder.
Warren and I have been seeing each other,
Edward announces, and the words hang in the air. Warren's face grows pinched in concern as Lila and Thomas look at the pair of them across the table. Lila's the first to break the silence. She laughs. Well, of course you are. You're not that sneaky, boys, she says, and Thomas scoffs, looking down at his plate. Warren laughs nervously in relief.
I just felt the need to be honest now that we're all back together,
Edward says, settling down and sliding an arm over Warren's stiff shoulder. Thomas slinks further down in his chair, and Warren shrugs out from under Edward to clear the plates at the table. Come on, Thomas, let's get you tucked in before the rest of us go about the day, Warren says, offering an arm to Thomas, who stands shakily, moving slowly next to Warren to the sitting room. When Warren sets him up with a pitcher of water, the remote, and a few of his favorite books from the library, Thomas grips Warren's wrist before he leaves the room.
Warren, thank you,
he says seriously, and Warren nods, the uncharacteristically tight contact sending a chill up his spine as he feels an intense déjà vu. Of course, Thomas, Warren says, leaving the room and heading out to find Edward. He finds his lover out at the barn, repairing the same siding on it that he had at the house the day before. Warren decides to take it easy again, hoping to keep his arms from breaking out, and therefore being back to working shape within a few days. He marveled at the way that Edward could work for hours with no break, and as the sun drew to its apex, Warren found the sight of the man's hairy chest dripping with sweat absolutely irresistible. He stands in the blazing sun, smiling and gesturing for Edward to follow him with a single finger. Edward laughs and smiles, following to the backside of the barn where Warren kisses him hard before pushing him as hard as he can muster against the wall. Edward bangs against the wooden slats, and Warren pulls his belt apart deftly, unzipping the large man's pants and dropping to his knees in the shade. Edward lets out a low growl as Warren fishes the massive inert member from his pants, and within seconds he has his mouth around Edward, sucking and swirling his tongue, feeling the spongy tissue lengthening and hardening against the roof of his mouth. He pumps, bowing his head fast and rough as Edward softly wraps his hands in Warren's hair. He reaches up without breaking his rhythm and presses on Edward's hands, willing him to play rough. The man obliges, slamming himself down Warren's throat, gagging him on his knees, and Warren sputters, sinking back down with joy and moaning around the turgid erection.
Warren, come on, let me, oh fuck,
Edward yells, releasing fast into Warren's waiting mouth. Warren smiles up at Edward as the man leans down, kissing his darling sweetly, sweeping his tongue around Warren's mouth, smiling as Warren's shocked expression when he pulls back. You are filthy, Warren laughs.
Says the man who just filleted me behind a barn,
Edward says, and Warren shrugs, skipping back around the front of the building to lay back and watch Edward until dinner was ready. The dinner they attended was quiet, tense, and strangely familiar to Warren, who wanted to talk to Thomas about his time away, to ask him about what had happened when he'd been swept away by the storm, but he felt that doing so in front of Edward would be a bit gauche, since they were still not speaking. When it came time to go to bed, Warren again opted to cuddle with Edward, his arms aching less than the day before, but still enough that he wanted to be cautious. When he fell asleep and woke up, he went through the same rigmarole that he had the previous night, waiting for Edward to sleep before he snuck from the room. As he backs out of his door, his back bumped against a foreign object in the hall. He spins in panic, but is face to face with Thomas, who shushes him and motions for him to follow. They creep out the front door, down the back lawn, and into the barn. As the moonlight disappears, Thomas speaks.
"This way, in the trailer,"
he says, and Warren winces, beginning to protest as the door to the tow behind opens and dim, warm light spills out. He edges towards it, remembering all the filth and bugs from the last time he'd opened it, and as he mounts the stairs, his mouth drops open in shock and tears spring to his eyes. The trailer was immaculate, the lights all on and quietly buzzing instead of flies and beetles as it had been. The stained, filthy blankets were gone, the bed folded up onto its orange and yellow tweed couch and table form. Warren senses cool air coming from the vents in the ceiling, and he marvels, wiping his eyes. How? I mean, I know what it really looked like, and the AC? Pop couldn't even get that running," Warren asks, flopping down at the small table across from Thomas, who smiles kindly.
"We needed somewhere to meet that wasn't quite so far away. And this felt easy. And I felt bad that your granddad spent his life in here, and this was where she made him stay. I wanted to apologize to him and to you."
Thomas explains, and Warren was already sure of what would happen, but having had it confirmed and then made right was a lot. He gathers himself and looks up at Thomas. "Okay, so I have some more questions," Warren says after a few moments.
"Shoot,"
Thomas invites. "Do you sleep? I've seen Lila and you wandering around, but Edward seems to fall asleep in these dreams." Warren starts. Thomas nods.
"We can sleep. Helps us recharge like you, but it isn't strictly necessary. I'm whatever the demon version of Insomniac is. My mother's a literal banshee at night. She uses your dreams as a way to connect back to home. Edward is just so cocky that he feels confident enough in his ability to sway you that he sleeps."
Thomas explains. "Okay, now, why is it that you guys can't see me when I nap during the day?" Warren continues.
"I'm not sure. If I had to guess, it would be because that's the inverse of your nighttime sleep. And besides that, during the day we're focused on keeping up appearances, and so our people tend not to acknowledge the fact that we aren't human to our prey,"
Thomas says, and Warren shivers at being referred to as prey. "This just occurred to me. How is Edward going to, try to make a child? We are both men," Warren asks. Again, Thomas smiles patiently.
"Well, technically we can take on any form, which means theoretically we could morph so that the area in which he received the seed was made differently from a genetic human, but we don't really do that in this family. There's no precedent, but I would assume he would sneak Lila in some sort of secret thing, maybe a strange menage a trois he thinks he can rope you into. I have no idea. It's not something we generally faced with."
Warren consumes this answer with disgust, which washes over his face. Thomas doesn't react. "So then, why are you helping me? Isn't this kind of a no-no for your people?" Warren asks. Thomas's face darkens.
"I'm helping you because you don't deserve this. Your family doesn't. We trap people. Some of the people may be greedy, sure, but that doesn't mean we should doom them generationally. They're heirs in perpetuity. I don't like it. I never have, but I thought it was my only option until you showed up and were kind to me. No one's ever done that before,"
he says, producing the pocket knife Warren had gifted him from his breast pocket, toying with it and smiling sadly. Warren reaches over, setting a hand timidly on Thomas's. "I did it because you're a person. You deserve to be recognized and considered. I thought you both did, Warren says.
Technically not a person,
Thomas reminds him, and Warren laughs, leaning back and asking his next question. So why not just tell me all this during the day? End it when I can actually leave.
Well, that's a twofold answer. Really, we can't. Only Mother can. She, as the entity who struck the deal, can reveal our natures during the day, during the time you are under our control. That's just the way it is. But even if I could, the others would no doubt find out and stop you. It would only make your days and nights unbearable. I don't wish for you to suffer unnecessarily, or at all, really.
Thomas explains. Warren nods. This all made sense, but he knew he had to probe deeper to figure out how much he could trust Thomas. So, say I break the pact, or I find my way around it. What happens next? Warren asks. Thomas shudders.
Well, if you break it, then my mother and me and my brother by proxy will have failed. Likely we'd be extinguished. It's happened before. The gates of hell aren't so kind when you can't fulfill your sole mission in eternity. If you skirted around it, I have no idea what would happen. It hasn't ever been done before. I assume, though, that the same thing would happen to us,
Thomas says. Warren feels a somberness settle over the trailer.
So for me to escape, to live a full life, you all have to die?
Warren is incredulous.
I think so. I can't be sure, but there's certainly a precedent for that,
Thomas says. Warren leans back. So then how do we get you out with me? He asks. Thomas laughs bitterly.
You don't, Warren. You go, and I stay. I wouldn't survive without a tether,
Thomas says. Shit, Warren mutters. The air is heavy around them, and as Warren looks around, he smiles. On a lighter note, how do you guys make everything look so lovely during the day? 'Cause at night, this place is downright awful in some spots, Warren asks, and Thomas smiles down at the table.
We control everything around you during the day, Warren. Everything you see, eat, smell, hear, and do is calculated by one of us. At night, we're limited as to how far we can manipulate before it cancels out our rights to your life force. We can lie, but manipulating your senses is a no-no,
he says. Warren is satisfied with this set of answers, feeling more informed and less inclined to run screaming into the mist outside the walls of Wells Manor. The rumbling begins, almost as if on cue. So, until tomorrow night? Warren asks. Thomas nods, his face back to normal, and he laughs. I just realized you don't have your casts on or bruises. Warren is shocked.
That's just for your sake, during the day. I was healed within a couple of hours just being in the same house as you,
Thomas says, as the black fog slips under the door of the trailer and swirls around them. Goodbye, Thomas, Warren calls as the light around them blinks out.
Goodbye, friend,
Warren hears quietly, and he smiles as his astral body merges with his physical form again. I'm back. It's me. It's always me. It's always been me. This chapter gave me low-key Twilight vibes. I wrote it, not on purpose like that, of course, but that is kind of what I was getting. It was very much those scenes where Bella is asking Edward, "What are you? I know what you are." And then when she finds out he's a vampire, you remember he kind of is just like explaining to her all these questions. I would like to say, number one, that my foot is waking up because I had my legs crossed while I was reading, and that hurts really bad. But more importantly, I don't think that's a bad thing, and let me explain why. Stories like this, fantasy stories, don't have the same set of rules that stories set in reality have. Like a crime novel set in America, there's a set of rules and laws, and assuming that it's only fiction and the fact that the crime is not real, not much needs to be explained. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need someone to explain that murder is wrong. In this story, however, we kind of don't get those rules. They're not set in stone because they're based around things that don't exist. Let's hold for plane. Did you hear the plane that was buzzing over while I was reading? That was really fun. I love that for me. Let's hold. Okay. Okay, she's gone. She sounded like she was full of dildos. So, yeah, dildos. So I do think that much in the same way that Twilight established this like fantasy world where vampires are real, this story needed some exposition, some explanation as to why things are the way they are, why they can't be easy, because our minds, often the simplest solution is the correct one. We would assume all these questions he's asking have simple answers, like, why can't you just tell me during the day? The simple answer is, I can, I just choose not to. But the more complex answer that would make this story make more sense is that he can't tell Warren what's going on. And even if he could, it would just make things worse, right? Other things like, I kind of had to cover my own tracks a little bit because these are, rough drafts, and I don't want to go back and be like, okay, well, I said this 3 weeks ago, but now I'm changing it. I'd rather go with the story as it is and change things later on. So I didn't really think about Edward falling asleep and how that might be odd for someone to like fall asleep during a dream where they're supposed to be awake. And even that part of it where he's explaining it was a little clunky, I know. But basically the idea is that Edward falls asleep in these dreams because he's so confident that he's going to conquer Warren, that he's not concerned with staying awake and figuring things out and planning and all that. He just goes to sleep. As far as the actual writing itself, I like that in this chapter I just kind of skip over dinner because we are kind of in the same format, and it's going to be that way not forever, but for most of the story, because Warren can't really leave. He can leave for a day or two, but he hasn't, because his life there is great during the day. He loves it. Do I look like this? Is this what I look like? Yeah, it is. In either case. So that's something that I do like, is I just skip over it. We don't need the whole dancing around each other each time. We don't need 1,000 words devoted to Warren telling Edward he doesn't want to have sex, or telling Edward, oh, my arms are sore, oh this, oh that. I also like that they do some sex stuff and it's quick and dirty. We don't focus on it for 1,000 words. He sucks him off. Also, the word fellate, so the verb form of fellatio, is not recognized for some reason by my Mac. I have no idea why the word fellate is not high on Merriam-Webster's dictionary matching Mac service as far as getting it verified. But I did look it up, and fellate is in fact a proper verb. It is a real word. Also, rigmarole is a real word. Also, I don't know how to spell menage a trois. I thought I did. Turns out I don't, and my Mac does not either. Not me bragging that I have a Mac. Ooh. Those are some things I liked about the chapter. I did some light reading, and I think I've said this before, but I always forget. Twilight, which is a pretty big book to me, not like the Bible or whatever, but it's a pretty big book. It's a substantial story just on its own, is like 110,000 words. This story is at like 72,000 right now. So we kind of need to, unless I'm not writing the next Tolkien novel, I do have to start wrapping her up, We've got to start getting to how they're going to get out. Do I know what the last scene is? Yes. But how am I going to get them there? And how am I going to stop dawdling around with chapter after chapter of Warren getting answers? I guess, to me, I'm worried that it feels boring, even though I spend hours and hours with it every week, and you guys just kind of get like 20 or 30 minutes of it a week. So it's probably not, hopefully not, as boring to you guys as it is to me. Not boring, but as repetitive. But they've now set up this whole world. All of the major questions are answered. If there are any questions that I still need to answer, or like plot holes that you've thought of, I welcome you to shoot me an email, tweet me. You can email me at floorrejects@gmail.com. You can tweet me at floorrejects on Instagram, or I just started a Tumblr for the Floor Rejects. You can find me at Tumblr/floorrejects. You'll find me. It's the same pictures as everything else, so you'll know. let me know if there's any glaring plot holes, because maybe I'm too close to it that I haven't realized there's some questions that still need answering. That is really all I have to say this week. I got a lot going on. Guess who's on new meds? That's me. I started some new medication for my brain because it's not doing good. And it has got me the opposite of my last medicine, which made me very sleepy and then hard to wake up. Now I just barely sleep at all. I'm just awake all the time. You can tell by my hair, it's full of insomnia. Look at it. Oh my God. If you're just listening, you can't see it, but it looks fucking ridiculous. It looks ridiculous. Anyway, so I don't have a lot of thoughts this week. Sorry if you were looking for the thoughts. If you're not looking for the thoughts, you got your story. You've got some exposition. Next week is going to be a week where the planning starts. You know, the planning on how do we get out of here? Do we get out of here? Is anything going to change? That's very exciting to me. What I will share with you, and this is something that I hope maybe piques some of your interest, or maybe a different set of interests. I've talked about it before, but I do post other videos on my little YouTube channel. And this next couple of weeks, I'm going to be working on a video. I did something pretty fucking crazy. So I guess I can just tell you what I did because you can't see it yet. I love this new movement to like have boucle chairs, and they're usually a pretty set barrel chair shape, but I don't really like boucle fabric. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't like boucle chairs. I like very round, geometric, mid-century kind of barrel chairs, not actual barrel chairs which are made out of barrels, but just the rounded, small, kind of rounded back armchairs. They don't have individual arms. The back and arms is all one curved piece. Let me tell you guys. So there's this one that I've been eyeing at a thrift store in the city where I live, and it's been there for like 2 months. And I kept telling myself every time I saw it, it's too big. I can't get it in my car. It's like a full-size armchair, and they don't come apart easily like a lot of armchairs that just unbolt. Otherwise, it would have been way easier. And then yesterday, I decided that I was going to get it in my car. And I did. I did manage to damage the interior windshield trim pillar trim. My door panel definitely has some dents in it that weren't there before. And I did some light scratch work on my fender. So, and I had to drive home. If this little area where you see me is my driver's seat and my driver area, the chair literally came out and was like pushing against my side so that I was driving like this. It was super not good. I would not have done it if I had to drive a far distance. But I got it home, cried about the damage I did to my car for a minute, and then decided I wanted to recover the chair. Now you can see behind me if you're watching this. I encourage you, just click on this video on YouTube just so you can see what I'm talking about. Alexa, set the bedroom to bright white. Do you see this behind me? You can't see this. Alexa, vanity off. Alexa, vanity off. You see this behind me? This I found at the same thrift store a couple weeks ago. It is one of those vintage tables with a sewing machine built in. I'd show you, but I don't want to get up because I'm ugly. And the sewing machine in it works. Like, it works flawlessly. It's a sewing machine called the Slant-O-Matic. It was manufactured in 1961, and it works better than any of the other sewing machines that I own. So I thought, Alexa, kill the lights. Sorry, I don't want you to see me. So I thought, let me reupholster this. Let me sew a cover. Let me kind of just tuck things in, sew it so that the fabric makes sense. But then I thought, I don't want to do that. And this chair was covered in the most chaotic, interesting early 90s fabric. It was like, You know the early 90s patterns where it's just a bunch of geometric shapes all over each other and they're all in bright colors? It was that, in tones of blue and purple and red and yellow and orange and green over the whole chair. So I thought, what's something else I can do? And I remembered in the back of my head that I've seen videos where people, instead of reupholstering a piece of furniture, if the fabric is in pretty good shape, they paint it. Now, bear with me. Hold on a second before you say you're an idiot. You're a idiot, not a idiot, an idiot, because it starts with a vowel, which means you say an. If it starts with a consonant, you say a before it. So, before you tell me I'm an idiot, hear me out. I just thought the chair cost $25 and like $200 worth of damage to my car. Actually, probably more like $400 to $500, but whatever. The chair costs $25. I'm going to try and paint this, and if it works, I don't have to reupholster it and try and figure out how to sew on a curved back. If it doesn't, I recover it anyway. No harm, no foul. You guys, first of all, the supplies were pretty pricey. Chalk paint is like $20 for a quart, and you have to get the finishing wax. What I will tell you, here's a secret that I'm going to put in the video, but I'll tell you right now. Don't buy the stupid fucking... that was aggressive, but don't buy the stupid... chalk brushes. They're so expensive and they're useless. Just use whatever paintbrushes you normally use. So I got all that stuff. I brought it home. I decided what color I wanted to be. I won't tell you. I won't show you. But I'll tell you it's a beautiful color. It's mid-century. It's very earthy. I love it. And I wanted to emulate leather without, of course, purchasing leather. I'm a vegetarian, so I think leather's probably a no-no. I think. I don't know. But where people usually paint it, what you're supposed to do is kind of water down the chalk paint a little, paint the fabric, sand your fabric with sandpaper in between coats so that it still feels like fabric. Well, the fabric that I had, like I said, was a very hectic pattern, and the threads were sewn so that the pattern was a textural pattern as well as a visual pattern. So I thought, what if I didn't sand? And the videos I had watched, nobody had really done that. They just said, well, when you don't sand it, it feels pretty stiff. But then I got to thinking, when you think of like a fully stuffed, almost overstuffed leather chair, the leather's very stiff and it's kind of hard. It's not super soft and mushy and malleable, and you can't just like pinch it and pull on it. It's usually pretty tough. So I painted this fucking chair with chalk paint, with paint that's meant for like a desk or a wall or anything other than fabric. It seemed so counterintuitive to do it, but I did it. And 4 coats of paint later, which sounds like a lot, but really it's just because you're literally I was covering up a really intense texture. I have a new, completely custom, exactly what I wanted chair for the cost of some paint and the chair. But so often I go into thrift stores, I go into vintage stores or antique stores, and I find these little pieces of furniture, and I'm like, I love them, but I don't think I could refinish them and do them justice. This was one of the first times I did a DIY or a hack or whatever, and it worked really well. Not the first time, but it's one of my best. It's one of the ones where I take pictures of it and I send it to everyone who I think might be interested because it was so amazing to me. I mean, I finished the chair with wax. You can buy different kinds of waxes. I actually ordered a different wax because you can buy one that's a darker tint, and I want to age it a little bit, make it look more like leather. You know, I don't want it to look like brand new leather, and I kind of just want to deepen the color of it a little bit, give it a different hue. Sorry that most of this outro is me talking about furniture, but it really made me excited. But that's what I did this week, and that's what I'm going to be posting on my YouTube channel. So I would love it if you went over and looked at it. I've got several flipping videos already on there. I've got one with a little vanity chair that I really like. I've got one with the desk that I use to work every day. It's a millennial pink desk. It's perfection. I've got one with a vintage coronet style folding chair. Do I have any other ones? No, I don't think so. Or we might. I'm not really sure. No, I think that's it. And then we'll have... I gestured at this like I was using this. Then we'll have... my next video will be painting that chair. Hear me out before you say you're a wild one. I am, but it really worked. It really worked really well. So that's going to be posted. I'd love for you to go over and check it out just so you can see what I'm talking about. It is wild how well it worked. And when I tell you I was taking my fingernail trying to scratch the paint off, I was like gouging at it, scratching at it, pulling it. I scraped it through a door frame at one point, and the paint didn't come off the chair. The paint from the wall ended up on the chair, if that makes sense. So the paint transfer was onto the chair, not off of the chair. I think that's a pretty good test of durability, and I also think that it's not really painting the chair in the sense that you're painting layers of paint just over the fibers. Watering it down the first couple of layers really allows you to permeate the fibers and really just kind of stain them. And then, of course, if you want to cover up the texture, you can layer over that. I don't know how useful it is long term with a super heavy usage. Like, my first thought was, I'm going to do this to my couch because I want my couch to be a totally different color than it is. I don't think I'm going to do that yet. I'm going to test it out on the armchair because usually the armchairs in people's houses don't get used as much as the like comfy couch and sectional. They're more decorative. So I'm going to test it out. But I am going to go because my foot's still asleep and my cat's waking up. He's going to start screaming. And I still have to do like 20 minutes of jump roping and all this editing because I'm what? Fat, and I'm bad at remembering to do stuff. So, bless you. Until next week, bye. I'm going to click the button and then I'm going to say bye. It didn't work. Bye.